In early 1815, Napoleon Bonaparte escapes exile on Elba, landing in France with a small force. He rallies supporters, reclaiming his throne in a daring bid to restore his empire. The European powers, alarmed, form the Seventh Coalition to stop him. Britain, Prussia, Austria, and Russia unite in the Seventh Coalition, determined to crush Napoleon once and for all. Diplomats meet, armies mobilize, and the stage is set for a monumental confrontation in the Low Countries. Napoleon gathers his Grand Armée, a seasoned force of 125,000 men, and marches north to strike before the coalition can fully unite. His plan: divide and conquer the British and Prussian armies in Belgium. The Duke of Wellington, commanding British and Allied forces, prepares to face Napoleon. Stationed south of Brussels, he fortifies his position, relying on Prussian support from Field Marshal Blücher to hold the line. Field Marshal Blücher, leading the Prussian army, vows to join Wellington despite recent setbacks at Ligny. His determination to march west will prove crucial, but time is against him as Napoleon advances. On June 17, 1815, heavy rain soaks the fields near Waterloo. Soldiers on both sides camp in mud, sharpening weapons and awaiting dawn. Napoleon delays, believing the wet ground favors his artillery. Dawn breaks on June 18, revealing a soggy battlefield. Napoleon surveys the scene from his headquarters, confident his 72,000 men can break Wellington's 68,000. The stage is set for a brutal day. Wellington positions his troops along a ridge, using farms like Hougoumont and La Haye-Sainte as strongpoints. His strategy: hold the line and buy time for Blücher's Prussians to arrive from the east. At 11:30 a.m., Napoleon unleashes his grand battery of 80 guns. Cannonballs tear through Wellington's lines, killing dozens. The bombardment aims to weaken the center, but the British hold firm behind the ridge. French infantry under General Reille assaults the fortified farm of Hougoumont. British guards defend fiercely, turning the chateau into a bloody choke point. The fight rages for hours, draining French resources. Napoleon orders General d'Erlon's corps of 16,000 men to attack Wellington's center. The massive formation advances under heavy fire, aiming to split the British line, but coordination falters in the chaos. As d'Erlon's men falter, British heavy cavalry, the Scots Greys, charge downhill, sabers flash, cutting through French ranks. The reckless assault scatters the infantry but leaves the cavalry exposed to counterattacks. French cuirassiers' armored cavalry strike back at the overextended British horsemen. The clash is brutal, with lances and swords clashing. Wellington's cavalry retreats, bloodied but having bought precious time. French forces besiege La Haye-Sainte, a key farm in Wellington's line. German riflemen inside fight desperately, but ammunition runs low. The position teeters as Napoleon presses his advantage. By mid-afternoon, Napoleon senses victory. Hougoumont burns and La Haye-Sainte weakens. He prepares his elite Imperial Guard for a final blow, underestimating the Prussian threat looming in the east. Prussian scouts emerge from the woods, signaling Blücher's approach. Wellington, battered but resolute, sends word to hold the line. The French, distracted by their frontal assault, fail to notice the danger. At 6:00 p.m., La Haye-Sainte falls to the French after a relentless assault. Wellington's center is exposed, and Napoleon orders his artillery forward, pounding the British with devastating effect. Blücher's Prussians finally arrive, attacking Napoleon's right flank at Plancenoit. The French divert troops to hold them back, weakening their push against Wellington. The tide begins to turn. Napoleon commits his elite Imperial Guard, 5,000 veterans, to break Wellington's center. They march uphill, drums beating under heavy fire. It's his last gamble to snatch victory from the jaws of defeat. Wellington rallies his troops, up guards and at them. The British line rises from behind the ridge, unleashing a volley that shatters the Imperial Guard. For the first time, they retreat. Seeing his guard retreat, Napoleon's confidence crumbles. Prussian pressure mounts and Wellington's line holds. He orders a desperate counterattack, but his exhausted army begins to waver under the dual assault. As dusk falls, the French army buckles. Prussian and British forces press forward, turning retreat into rout. Soldiers flee in panic, abandoning cannons and supplies as Napoleon's dream unravels. Wellington, sensing total victory, orders his army to advance. British and Prussian troops chase the fleeing French, capturing thousands. The battlefield is littered with the dead and dying. Napoleon abandons the field, fleeing in a carriage as his army collapses. His empire is finished, and he races south, pursued by enemies determined to capture the fallen emperor. Night falls over Waterloo, the ground strewn with bodies and wreckage. Wellington and Blücher meet, exhausted but triumphant. The battle claims over 40,000 casualties, a grim toll for peace. Days later, Napoleon surrenders to the British, boarding HMS Bellerophon. His reign ends in exile on St. Helena, far from the glory he once knew, as Europe sighs in relief. Wellington returns to Britain a hero, his victory at Waterloo cementing his fame. He later becomes prime minister, shaping a nation that now leads the coalition against Napoleonic tyranny. Blücher, the old Prussian warhorse, is hailed in Berlin. His timely arrival at Waterloo turns the tide, proving Prussian resolve and securing Germany's place in the new European order. The coalition leaders meet at the Congress of Vienna to redraw Europe's map. Waterloo ensures stability, curbing French ambition and ushering in a century of relative peace among great powers. Today, Waterloo is a quiet Belgian field dotted with monuments. Visitors walk where history was made, reflecting on the clash that ended an era and reshaped the world. Flashback: Napoleon's rise begins with victories like Austerlitz, showcasing his genius. These triumphs fuel his ambition, setting the stage for his eventual overreach and the showdown at Waterloo. Flashback: Wellington hones his skills in Spain, fighting Napoleon's forces. The Peninsular War bloodies the French, weakening them for the final reckoning in 1815 at Waterloo's muddy fields. Flashback: Napoleon's 1812 invasion of Russia ends in disaster. The retreat from Moscow cripples his army, emboldening the coalition and paving the way for their stand at Waterloo. Flashback: Napoleon's return from Elba sparks the 100 Days. His rapid reconquest of France alarms Europe, triggering the coalition's swift response and the inevitable clash at Waterloo. Artillery dominates Waterloo, with Napoleon's cannons pounding Wellington's lines. The muddy ground hampers their effect, but the sheer volume of fire shapes the battle's brutal rhythm. Cavalry charges define Waterloo's chaos. British, French, and Prussian horsemen clash, their speed and ferocity turning key moments, though often at great cost to both sides. Infantry squares repel cavalry, while volleys of musket fire decimate ranks. Wellington's disciplined lines and Napoleon's aggressive columns showcase the era's evolving tactics at Waterloo. Rain the night before Waterloo turns fields to mud, delaying Napoleon's attack. The soggy ground slows artillery and infantry, giving Wellington and Blücher critical time to coordinate. Marshal Ney, Napoleon's fiery cavalry leader, drives the French assaults. His courage is unmatched, but misjudgments like the cavalry charge contribute to the day's unraveling disaster. Lord Uxbridge leads Wellington's cavalry with daring, losing a leg to cannon fire. His charge against D'Erlon's corps disrupts the French, proving decisive despite the personal cost. The Imperial Guard, Napoleon's finest, earns eternal fame at Waterloo. Their final charge fails, but their bravery under fire cements their legend as symbols of loyalty and valor. Blücher's 50,000 Prussians march through rough terrain to reach Waterloo. Their arrival late in the day overwhelms Napoleon, showcasing the coalition's coordination and relentless determination. Waterloo's armies rely on supply lines stretched thin. Ammunition, food, and horses fuel the fight, but exhaustion and shortages plague both sides, amplifying the battle's desperate stakes. Waterloo leaves 40,000 dead or wounded, a staggering toll. Families mourn and survivors bear scars, a reminder of war's price paid by common soldiers and officers alike. Waterloo ends Napoleon's dream of empire. His defeat reshapes Europe, humbling France and elevating Britain and Prussia, while his exile marks the close of a revolutionary era. Victory at Waterloo propels Britain to global dominance. The Royal Navy and industrial might flourish, cementing an empire that shapes the 19th century, born from Wellington's triumph. Waterloo elevates Prussia, uniting German states under its leadership. Blücher's role foreshadows a powerful nation, setting the stage for Germany's emergence as a European force. Waterloo closes the Napoleonic Wars, ending decades of conflict. Europe enters a new age of diplomacy and balance, leaving behind the revolutionary fervor that once shook the continent. Waterloo teaches strategy, coalition strength, and the cost of hubris. Military academies study it, leaders heed its warnings, and its legacy endures in the annals of warfare. The Battle of Waterloo, fought in mud and blood, reshapes history. Napoleon falls, Wellington rises, and Europe finds peace. Its echoes remind us of war's cost and humanity's resilience.